Jackie, thank you so much for joining us. We are here. We have a special guest today, Jackie Francis. Jackie is a leader in global climate mitigation, and she's with the Global Warming Mitigation Project. She's the executive director and founder of this amazing organization. Jackie, thank you so much for being with us here with Fulcrum Financial Group and live streaming to our viewers.
Sarah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored.
This is so fun. Can you please tell our viewers a little bit more about your organization? And we want to find out about your journey. How did you get here?
So I created, founded, and run the Global Warming Mitigation Project. And I started this organization as I was getting a master's in energy policy, and climate. And so that motivated me to do more on getting this planet off of the emissions caused by fossil fuel drilling and producing and combustion. So I realized that there were hundreds of solutions being deployed across the planet. And I decided that this was a great way for me to kind of light up that landscape and get people to understand that we can get to a place where we transition off fossil fuels.
That's fantastic. So you have your master's, right? What is your master's in, and where did you get that from?
So I actually embarked on a master's program when I turned about 50. So a few years ago, and I got the degree in energy policy and climate from Johns Hopkins, and it's a very strong climate science degree, and it was one of the best programs in the world that I could find for what I was looking to do.
That is so impressive. You're live streaming from Colorado. Aspen, Colorado, right? Isn't that you? And then I'm live streaming from Spokane, Washington. So tell us 3 things that you wish all people knew about global warming.
So that's a great question. I wish people knew that it's an incredibly serious, I don't want to use the word problem, but an incredibly serious thing that we need to pay attention to. And I really want to emphasize that people need to know that without solving the situation of an imbalance in the carbon cycle, the worldwide carbon cycle, we won't be able to survive as humans or any other creatures on this planet. We have to get there. And the second thing I want them to know is that we can get there. We have these, pretty amazing human brains, and we have a great deal of solutions already being deployed around the world. So we have hope there where solutions are happening and we can get there. And the third thing I want them to know is that they need to be a part of it. They need to start making really strong decisions in their own life that lead us to an energy transition where we can have a planet that really is quite similar to the planet we have, the economy and everything we have now, just using different types of energy and different types of thought processes about what we use to get that energy.
Yeah, that you bring up excellent points. And you and I both, with you in Colorado, me in Washington, we both have been hit with wildfires. Certainly there's other parts of the country, flooding. The world, there's been so many changes, and it seems so challenging with some of the things going on. And yet, let's get back to the choices, because people sometimes can think that it's bigger than themselves, and yet we all make choices, and how can we break it down so our viewers could take action in their own lives, regardless of where they live, whether they live in a high density or an urban, a rural area, the different socioeconomics. What are some things that we can do to take steps to help mitigate this problem?
That's also another really great question. The thing is like in anything in life, once we kind of start down a path, we start paying more attention to it. And, whether it's like healthy eating or something like that, you start making small little steps, and then you start getting more into it. And that's kind of how we should look at the transition we should make into getting off fossil fuels. If you're really uncomfortable with making big changes, then you can start with little ones, and start kind of educating yourself more and more about what you feel like your contribution should be. And I really feel like we should all, the climate scientists and the politicians and stuff, should meet people where they are. And there are, so many, it's a myriad of ways people can actually get involved. Your next car purchase could be an EV, and you could contact your energy company and say, I want to put a little bit more money into you guys as a utility going to renewable energy. And you just putting a little pressure on utility companies can change that. I just read an article the other day about the biggest utility in Wyoming of all states, a huge coal, oil, and gas state, is going to change their business model to go to renewables. And they're getting pushback from the politicians of Wyoming because 50% of revenue for the government in Wyoming comes from oil, gas, and coal. But this utility is like, leading in a state like Wyoming, which I find, so encouraging. And if people just put, a little more pressure on their politicians and their energy companies, and the choices they make with their consumption, that can go a long way. And of course, there's things like walk more, eat a little more plant-based, maybe try and go organic if you can, because that gives kind of a signal to the industry that we want food that's, made using soil sequestration and better sort of regenerative practices. So I could just go on, and this is such a big question, and there's so many things that we can do. So it's it's a big area where you can do a lot.
I love that point. Because as consumers, how going to the grocery store, just like you said, if you can afford organic, I don't know why anyone wouldn't choose to for the better health benefits, but it also brings down the cost for everyone else. It makes it more competitive, so then the farmers make more. And also you brought up, you and I were talking about beef, just what a big footprint animal meat is. So I know when you and I were talking the other day, we talked about the opportunity maybe have meat a few times a week versus every day, like spreading out. What other types of buying consumption? What about packaging? Is that an area that people can make steps in their day-to-day living purchases?
Well, we've all heard the saying reduce, reuse, recycle. And the reason it's in that order is because that's the best order for our planet. So reduce is the first one. And, if you want to really dig deep into that, it's reducing in everything. It's reducing in maybe the amount you buy so you don't throw away as much. It's reducing in the packaging. It's reducing in the distance something has to travel before it gets to you. So, things like ordering, plastic throwaway stuff from China is just silly. It's just a silly thing that doesn't do anything for, us really as a planet. So think about, reducing everything in your life. If you can reduce the amount of packaging or the amount of food you throw away, or any of those things in your life, that's the first step that's really helpful. And obviously reusing is the next, and recycling, we were talking earlier about how that isn't really going to save the planet, because one, we're not doing it well, and two, it also has a carbon footprint attached to it. So we really need to reduce all the things we have in our lives. And I realize that economically, that's sort of a question of how do we keep the GDP up when we're reducing, but there is a balance. And ultimately, it is more important for us to save the planet than it is to keep, wasting it.
Right. Those are great, excellent points. So with our clients, so many, in ESG investing is a priority for many of the people we help get to their financial goals. ESG stands for environmentally, socially responsible governance companies. As people are considering making investments in company and want in an investment and want to make sure that they're participating in the solution and not creating more of the problem, what are some things you see that people can do in that process?
I think the number is very small. I think it's around 1% of even ESG investments are actually going towards global warming mitigation, which is, of course, my focus. And there's kind of two different climate change sort of, I don't want to say camps, but kind of that, where one is mitigation and one is adaptation. And mitigation means reducing the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere so that our global warming can be curtailed. And adaptation is getting more systems in place to help with the oncoming, climate change problem. So in my book, this is a little bit like the Wild Wild West, and a lot of financial advisors and investors don't really know enough about, the landscape. And so ESGs are, the environmental, social, and governance. Environmental is really a very big arena, and climate is very small part of that. So environmental could be anything from taking plastic out of the oceans or investing in just different ways about, maybe conservation or logging or something like that, but it's not necessarily a climate lens. So I think what would help is if more financial advisors and people knew exactly what we're talking about when we talk about global warming mitigation. So it's specifically about putting money towards alternatives for fossil fuel, everything. So alternatives for energy, alternatives for transportation and mobility, alternatives for even social and cultural impacts. So I think what's important in my world is that more people really understand what putting money into the climate crisis through mitigation and adaptation actually means. And that's kind of the path that I'm trying to help people with right now, is getting people to understand what we're really talking about when it's keeping fossil fuels in the ground and transitioning to new ways of flying, driving, and getting our energy.
Right. That's thank you so much. That's some really good information. For our viewers to walk away from this conversation with one actionable next step, what do you hope it is?
That's a tough question because there's a lot of next steps. But I think, ultimately we need all our electrons to come from green energy. So a big step would be to contact your utility provider and say, we want you to get onto renewable energy, whether it's hydro, geothermal, solar, wind. There's a lot of options that utility companies can, trade to get off coal, oil, and natural gas. And that putting the pressure on those big players, that's a big deal.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for being with us here today, Jackie. Just really look forward to learning more from you and your organization. How can our viewers contact you if they have any follow-up of wanting to get involved in some of the ideas that you've proposed today?
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Sarah. And we have a website. People can go to globalwarmingmitigationproject.org. They can also put in healingcurveprize.org, and that sends them to the same place. And we can get them on our newsletter, and they can contact us through our website. And any questions that they have, I'm happy to try and answer for them.
Great. Thank you so much, Jackie, for joining us today. And we look forward to following your success. So we look forward to being part of the solution. So thank you.
Thank you too, Sarah. Take care.